All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here on this gorgeous Newport day. My name is Cinnamon Moffett. I'm the research program manager here at Oregon State University's Hatfield Marine Science Center. Thank you all for being here. We've got a quick announcement from our instructor for the class before we get started. So I'm going to bring Kate up.
Can I just stand here?
They can't see you.
Oh, good. People who are registered in class, particularly the grad students, you guys probably have two options for clicking to submit your summaries. I'm going to ask you to submit on the 407_X 400 or X 800. So ignore the 507s. You'll still get grad credit. Don't worry about it. But this just makes it easier for me, makes it easier for you. So don't panic when I unpublish the 507. I'll panic first. Thanks, guys. And thanks to everybody for your timely submissions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So this event, if you haven't figured it out yet, is a hybrid event. So we have folks online and folks in the room. For folks online, we do have some tech support. If you're having difficulty running your Zoom meeting, you can put into the chat any questions you might have, and our volunteer, Roseanne, will help you out. That same chat box is where you can put any questions for today's speaker. For folks in the room, I've got a couple of new faces in the space. If you haven't participated in a seminar before with us, please make sure that when you have questions for our speaker that you raise your hand or you go to the mic stand over there and use a mic to ask your question. That way the folks online can hear your questions as well. Just a quick little announcement before I hand this off to the person who's going to introduce our speaker. I don't have it, Daniel. We'll have to do it together. That's okay. We'll work it out. For next week, we have a seminar from David Taylor, who is a new postdoc with the Miller Lab. He's going to be talking about using isotopes to track changes in species development related to climate change. So that'll be a really interesting talk. So come on back. So since neither Daniel or I are ready to do a formal introduction of today's speaker, I'm going to actually hand it off to our speaker, and maybe you can give us just a little background of you, Katherina. Look how unprofessional we are. All right, so I'm going to hand it off to today's speaker and let her introduce herself to you all.
Oh, I'm going to change mics, right?
Please.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Hi, I'm Katherina Audley, and I'm the founder of an organization called the Whales of Guerrero. Let's see. This is going to be a really personal talk, and I've never done this talk before, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's a talk that I've been wanting to give for many years now, and it's ever evolving, this subject. But who doesn't love hearing about mistakes, right? And so that we can prevent them ourselves, so that we can learn from them. And it's not easy to talk about mistakes, but there's so many things that I thought this work would do that went so differently. And I want to share with you today. I'm going to give you a really under the hood, inside sort of perspective of what it looked like from deep inside the bones of my project that I did. I see a lot of new faces here today, so I will give you some background about the project so that you get an idea about what we did to start out. And so I'll go through and explain a little bit about it and show you the big, bright, beautiful place where we are today. Then we're going to reel it back and show you some of the big challenges that were going on that I was personally facing just as a human, that I had to learn and grow through in order to be able to have my project continue and be healthy. So my hope is that I can share some of this with you to give some of you a boost or a jump if there's things that you maybe you already know all of this stuff, and that's awesome. And maybe you don't, and maybe you don't know that you don't know. But yeah, and I will leave time at the end so that we can have hopefully a nice juicy conversation about all of it. And so that's it. Okay, so here comes the talk part. All right, so I work in a place, and it's in Mexico in the Southwest Pacific, called Guerrero. And I'll show you where it is on the map in a few minutes. But when I started this project, I started it because I was looking for a way to put together the things that I love and the things that I'm passionate about with using the skills that I have. And I have a very eclectic skill set. So I was 40 when I started this project. And the things I put together are, I love whales. Who loves whales here? Like 100%. Who hates whales here? We all love whales, right? Yay. So I love whales. I never get tired of them. And I also love Mexico. Who loves Mexico here? Yay. So I love Mexico as much as I love whales. I love everything about it. And in particular in Mexico, there's this little village called Barra de Potosí, which is a community of 700 people. And I've been going there since 1997. And I just love this place. And so those are two things that I love. Another thing I really love is I love making good things happen for people. I love bringing people together and making good things happen. It makes me so happy. So that's what I love. What I can do is I can write, I can run projects, I can delegate. I'm good at finding people to do the things that I'm not good at and getting them to do it. I can build things, and I can make things happen that are complex and hard. So I'm a person that can make big, hard things happen. And that's, something that not everybody can do, and it's something that I can do. So when I started my project, and I'll explain more about what it is soon, I didn't know much of what I was doing. There was the strong research element, and I didn't know much. I'd worked as a volunteer on a lot of whale projects, but I didn't know how to run one. But I did know if I put my energy into this, and I worked really, really hard at it for 10 years, that in 10 years, I would know some stuff that would be so valuable that people would fly me around the world to share what I knew. And I just got back from Kenya last month, and we just had our 10th anniversary, and I got to share what we figured out in Guerrero with people in Kenya in a very meaningful and rewarding way. So this is what this talk is about. I want to tell you, I don't have the answers for everything. I'm just going to give you some before and after, and some of the assumptions I made, some of the big mistakes I made, and that's where we're going to go. Okay, so this is where I live in Mexico. It's called Barra de Potosí, and you can see it's in Southwest Pacific, Mexico. That little village below the hill is Barra de Potosí, and there's this nice, beautiful lagoon system behind it. So that's to locate you geographically. These are the people of Barra de Potosí. And when I got there in 1997, I used to love fishing. I've been a commercial fisherman at some points, and it was the fishiest place I'd ever been. And I would just go out and fish with my friends, and I kept going back every year, and I got to be good friends with them. And I watched this tourism sort of start around fishing, and then I watched the fishery collapse. I watched my friends struggle. I got married there 11 years ago to an American man. We went down and we brought 80 people from around the world, and I watched this infusion of 80 people buying guacamole and buying handicrafts, help my friends. That felt really good. I wrote stories. I used to work for the Oregonian and other travel places, and so I'd write stories about this place as this paradise, and that would infuse the place with tourism. After my wedding, it felt really good to send more people that way. So that's kind of where it came from. But when I wrote these stories, I realized pretty quickly I wasn't being honest The Barra de Potosí that I was writing about was this fishy paradise with a pristine golden sand beach. And the reality was, in those 17 years since I had started visiting, the fishery had really collapsed. The ocean had been changing and rising and tearing up the coastline. There was a lot of pollution. There was a cruise ship threat. There had been cartel changes that were problematic. People were not going to school. And there had not been tourism for a while because of H1N1 virus and this cartel violence that had been very well publicized. So I decided to help. I decided I'm going to put my energy into helping this place. And I'm not going to just write stories about it. I'm going to do something to actually give people a new additional way to survive and figure out how to work together to bring nature back. That was the little goal I set out to do. And I decided to start with whales. As I said, I love whales. And every time I had gone out fishing in the wintertime, I'd seen whales, and there was no whale or dolphin ecotourism in the area. But here's the problem. I'm not a scientist. So I have a degree in ancient religion, so useful. And I love science. I'm been a science wannabe. I've worked in science museums, but I'm not a scientist. And I thought, oh, I want to study whales, but I don't know how. But I decided to do it anyway. I've worked in many, many whale projects around the world since 1995. I've studied whales as a volunteer. I've written about whales, and I'm good at learning, and I'm a good hard worker. And I had interviewed and worked with a lot of scientists around whales. I'm the tech IT manager for the Society for Marine Mammalogy. And so I've helped a lot of people like reset their passwords and stuff. And so they think I'm this like genius because I know how to help them reset their password. And so then I'm able to hit them up real fast for some science help in exchange. So I knew something and I had connections, and I thought, all right, I've seen this go really well with humpback whale ecotourism, and I've seen this go really badly around the world in the places I've gone. And what works really well is when the community is in the driver's seat and the community is united and working together to have very responsible ecotourism. And what doesn't work is when it's fractured, when there's not a common goal to keep the whales safe, because the whales being protected and safe helps your community to be healthy and protected as well. So because of that, I decided instead of just doing let's see how many whales there are and start ecotourism together, we would do this very in-depth study about whales, and there would have to be strong elements of what's in it for me. There had to be for the whole village. So there had to be social development. There had to be inclusivity of many, many people in the community. There had to be a lot of benefits beyond just whale ecotourism in order to help this community find their way toward environmental health again. And I didn't ever want this place to be a place that would hurt whales, and I didn't want this place to be a place that was disempowered and left out. So what I set out to do is I found out no one had ever studied humpback whales in this area. So we had to figure out, first of all, if there were enough marine mammals to support ecotourism. So the idea would be that we would do a 5-year study about humpback whales and dolphins in the area. We would work together with these guides that were fishermen who would become whale watch guides, and they would work and collect the data together with us, and we'd create a monitoring and a sighting network. There'd be this immediate boost to the economy by creating this ecotourism option that wasn't just about whales, but about marine biodiversity. And long-term, there is the potential to make this place a federally acknowledged whale watch site, which then puts more visibility and also potentially more protection on the area by indoctrinating it into federal law that it's a place where authorized whale watching is able to happen. So in addition to like doing this study, I'd worked at this great science museum called the Exploratorium in San Francisco. And they teach you at this place, like you go into this big chaotic space. It's kind of like OMSI, but way funkier. And there's about 500 exhibits about physics mostly. It's the Museum of Science, Art, and Human Perception. And you go in there and you play. You just play with all of these exhibits, and they have you try something, and then you notice something, and then they say, what's going on? So you go in and you play, and then you go home and you rewire your lamp. And there's nothing in the museum that teaches you how to rewire your lamp, but the museum lights up your inquiry paths and gets you into this curious sciencey mind where you're like really ready to roll up your sleeves and give something a try and do a notice and what's going on. And so that's what I learned from working there for 5 years, was how to make stuff like that. And I studied and learned how people learn and think working in that museum. And so I carry that around with me every day, and everything that I do is sort of how to get people to connect and engage deeply and wake up their own inquiry process to be more engaged and empowered with the world around them. So that's something that I carried around. So when I got to the village and I started doing this whale study, I had to make a map and make a calendar, and I put it on this kindergarten wall in the middle of the tiny little village. And I would, every day get off the boat and write down how many whales there were and where they were located. And people in the village got curious. I would see them gathering around this map. And they didn't, I knew some people from fishing there, but I didn't know a lot of people. And they would be like, well, why are you here? And like, why don't you have kids? And where's your husband? And what are you doing? And I couldn't be like, well, whales are great, and I like whales. I had to be super personal and explain to them why I was there and what I was doing. And so, because I had this science museum background that could kind of help me explain about the whales. And I also would tell them really personal stuff. So I would tell them, I'm here to study the whales and the dolphins. And the reason why is because I love this place. I love you guys. I'm worried about the nature. And I've seen places in the world where there are fishermen that have such good friendships with the whales that the whales will come up to the boats to meet them. And people come from around the world to get to experience this. And they thought that was really interesting. And I told them that when I got married there, it really, really inspired me to want to help. And that I wanted to help them through like looking at this together. So that was sort of my why. And we could all agree that the fishery wasn't doing as well as it used to. And so that gave us a common goal. So one thing I thought is, I love hanging out with old fishermen. It's like my favorite thing. I can just hang out all day long and shoot the breeze with fishing guys. And I thought that that's what I would be doing. I thought I'd be out on this boat with fishermen chit-chatting, and that's not what happened. What happened is I told the community I want to help. And they said, well, if you want to help, you have to focus on the kids and the young men who are just starting out and the women. And I thought I would be working with the families that I was already friends with, but they weren't the ones that were very interested in tourism or in whales. And they weren't the right people to work with in the community. And the community told me that. They said, they didn't say, oh, they're bad people or anything like that. They just said, those aren't really the people that you want to work with if you want to make a big difference in the village. And so I had the village tell me who to work with. And I worked with those people instead of with my friends. And there's always people in villages where they're more used to working with foreigners, or they speak English, so you don't have to speak another language all the time. And I didn't work with them. I worked with the people that the village said to work with, even though I had to improve my Spanish a lot, and even though I didn't know them, and even though maybe I didn't even like them that much, I still had to just work with the people that the community said were the important people to work with. The other thing is, I'm not really a kid person. Like, I don't have kids, and I like some kids, but I don't like all the kids. They don't give me energy. And like they said, you have to work with the kids. And every day I would get off the boat and the kid would come running up to me and take my gear and help. And Mexican kids are very helpful, which is very lovable. But they, you know, they wear me out. And but I had to work with the kids because that is what the village told me to do. And then in year 2 of my project, I did a smart thing and I hired people who are kid people, who are Mexican, and they work with the kids. And the kids are still like they're my kids, but I'm not giving all my energy to the kids, but the kids are definitely being really, really focused on. Also, the village was totally right about involving the women. And I didn't know how we would involve the women because women don't go on boats, they don't swim, they're in their homes. But over 10 years of time working with them, we started taking the women on the boats. After we had taken all the kids, the women became more ready to get out on a boat and have experiences with whales. And so we took women on their first boat rides, and it was really powerful for them to leave land and see their place and see whales and spend some time out there doing something brave and scary. Eventually, some of the women came with us down to Oaxaca, and we did a learning exchange with the women where we studied mangroves, and they started seeding mangroves and reforesting the mangroves in our area. Some of them became walking tour guides, and we studied the ecosystems together. And now they take people walking through these beautiful 8 ecosystems of our area. And when the women got involved, that just gave us a super boost for the project. And so it didn't have much to do about whales, but it really advanced conservation in our area. Another thing that's gone on with the women is we've been doing art with them for many, many years now. And it started as this tiny little art fair. And the women have become fine painters. And now they've completely transformed the village. And it's full of murals that are nature-themed murals that cover the walls of the place. They also are now business runners. They teach cooking classes in their homes. And it's thrilling for them to have people come and into their homes, and you get to visit them and be with like a 4-generation family in their home, and they get to show you and laugh at how bad you are at masa and making tortillas, but together you make this delicious meal. And it's a really empowering and beautiful thing for them to get to do. So here's the result of 10 years of working there. Is these days, we bring altogether, there's $2.5 million that get infused into the village through ecotourism, through training, through jobs, through promotion. So we've made a really big difference for the village financially from the work that we've done. We've also, the beaches are clean again. It's harder and harder to find garbage. I used to be able to pick up a garbage bag or 2 full of garbage in an hour. And now I can walk for about 25 minutes and just fill up a little, like a dog poop bag with garbage. And villages, the community is doing their own beach cleanups now. Single-use plastic is being phased out, and women and men are making livings as tour guides. And a lot of the kids that have been hanging out with us in our office and in our science clubs and in our education programs, some of them are going on a science path. They're becoming scientists and veterinarians and guides and naturalists. And all of them are more connected to nature as a result of what we're doing. And ultimately, like, the community loves science. They love it and they think it's cool. And I love that it's a good tool that everybody can use together. So that's the kind of the success. And now we're going to talk about some of the things that I learned in order to make this work. One of the things that I've learned and this was like my first year, was to be consistent and be on time. And so it doesn't matter if there's one person that might show up to your meeting or a whole bunch of people, or if everybody's always late, doesn't matter. What I had to do was be consistent and be on time, week after week, year after year. And now there's a lot of consistency and punctuality. And I'm chronically late person. So I'm very bad about, I tend to jam pack myself and come screeching in at the last minute. And I had to improve myself to show up on time and to really respect and honor that. But by being respectful and honoring people's time and being consistent, that was something. So I thought I could just kind of go with the flow and be where people were, and oh, well, it didn't work. But by me being very consistent and on time, that was important. Another thing I learned was how critical it is to work in concert with the timing of the community. So like we always have these village events. They were continuous in the first years, and they continued to be a pretty steady thing where we would get some cool drone footage or neat pictures of whales or a new whale song that was really neat, or biologists would show up with a projector and a microscope, and we'd have plankton night and like go get plankton from the lagoon and bash it up onto the wall of the village, and everybody would drag out their Corona beach chairs and like look at plankton together. So nerdy. And but you can't do that when there's a church event happening, or there's a birthday party, or there's something. So what we did is we got the kids to make the invitations to all of our events, and then the kids post them in the places that are important, like the tortilleria and the tiendas and the places where people's eyes actually are, and get them into their homes. So everybody knew about the events, and so everybody had this sense of ownership. So that was a way to work together with the village to make sure that the timing of anything that we were doing worked together. And this is what our village events look like. Like that's plankton night up there on the upper left-hand corner. So yeah, by advertising it well, it tended to work out pretty well. Okay, so I'm going to tell you now about one of the hardest times I've had, or one of the hardest things I've learned in the past 10 years. So this is like a victory picture. This is a picture of near the end of a week-long learning exchange where we brought 14 members of our community to Barra to learn success stories. And we visited San Ignacio Lagoon and Cabo Pulmo, and we looked at community cat share programs and all of these things. And it was like, it took me like 7 years to raise the money for it. And it was such a long process to make it happen. And so it was this awesome exchange. And we traveled all around, and I had a team member. My whole team is local except for me. They're Mexican and they're local. And I had a guy on my team who his name was Avi, and his job was to make videos about what was happening and to interview people. And at the end of the exchange, we'd been driving around in a van. We were all so close. And I asked Avi if I could sit in on one of the like end of the trip interviews. And he's like, no. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, because they won't talk about anything openly and honestly if you're there. Like they'll talk, but they won't tell the truth. And I got so mad. I was so mad that I thought I earned that. You know, I mean, I have these people's trust. I raised this money, and it's different for me. And I was so mad. And then I got home and I stewed on it for a day or two, and I realized that he was right. And I apologized to him. And I realized that even though I had the trust of the community and the love, and even though I had raised the money, it didn't mean I was owed anything. There was nothing owed, and there could never be an expectation that anybody would be a certain way with me because I had done something. And that's when I really learned how to take myself out of the center of the project, and how to give the community their own space, you know, and to trust that and let it go. And it was a really hard thing for me to learn. And now when people need to make decisions, I am the first to offer to leave the room and to suggest that people meet without me. And I'm happy to provide feedback or things like that, but it goes really, really well now. And I mean, it went well before, but now there's a kind of an ease and a comfort that feels so much better than anything before. And that was a lesson I learned the hard way. And, you know, that it's not about me, decenter myself, and nobody owes me anything. Okay, so one of the things that I feel very proud about this work that we've done is we've got 75 guides that are from Zihuatanejo, Ixtapa, and Barra, Potosí, and they are amazing whale watch guides. And every year we have this in-depth training program, and we get super connected and inspired, and they are the frontline defenders against tuna boats and shrimp boats and people behaving poorly around whales, and they help each other, and they are a community. So this year we're even working to start a whole in its own guide run vigilance and monitoring program that these guys have been lobbying for. So this picture looks like unity, and it is, but there are a lot of black sheep in this group. And something that I've learned is that it's so easy to work with the ones that are easy and the ones that make your job easy and that show up and blah, blah, blah. But then there's plenty of people who are challenging to work with, who might blow up a meeting or be funky in some way. And what I've learned is that the ones that do that, they actually bring your group together. Because and my teammate, Kike, pointed this out to me. He was the one that gave me this insight. I didn't get this all on my own. It's that when someone is obnoxious in a group meeting, what it does is it tells the whole group how you don't want to be. And it brings all of you together in this other way. And it kind of helps you to define and know who you are even more. So keeping the door open and not kicking those people out from the group, even though my ego would like to do that, has been something that I've learned to do, because it can go really badly if you just kick them out and let them start their own thing or just be over there. So staying inclusive, and that's something that I've learned. All right, delegate and share and give credit. Those are big things. Now, I thought you guys would get a kick out of this one, because now I'm not on that picture. I am not very good at data. So my team is really great at data. And so the kids, we have an open door office policy, and so they draw portraits of us often. It's very flattering. And so this is a portrait of Tara, Claudia, and Pablo in the laboratorio doing data entry. And what melts the cockles of my black little heart here is that, like, this is our lives, you know, like you hear, I'm a whale researcher, and you think you're out there like doing the whaling, you know, but this is actually what most of us do all day long. And I love that these kids want to be scientists when they grow up, and they're like, that's what science looks like. You are glued to a computer, and every once in a while you get to get outside. But yeah, anyway, what I've learned is that in order to make it happen, you have to hire people to do the parts you're not good at and that wear you out. So the kids, the data management, you know, I can do it, but I can't do all of it. So better hire that out to somebody who actually gets energized by it and is good at it, rather than me trying to do all of those things. And then that's freed me up to do the things that I can do, which are to build bridges and bring people together and make the thing happen. So the biggest thing that I have learned and practiced and done along the way is to assume noble intent. And I talked about this last night, and I talk about this everywhere I go, as I think that the most important thing that I've done that's made my project work is I set people up to be champions and heroes of the story that we're making together. And I show people that I see the good in them, and I show them what the good is that I see in them. And I tell people over and over again that I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know what it's like to walk in their shoes, but I'm always going to try. And so I've heard from so many people out there in the world that they assume people are bad, or that things won't work out, or that a community is beyond hope. And every time I hear that, I think that they probably shouldn't even be there in that place doing that, because if you expect people are going to disappoint you, they probably will. And I don't come from that place, and it tends to work out really, really well in the work that I do, that I assume the best of people. So here's a recap of the lessons learned. So all of you taking this for credit, there's your shot. And let's see. So we'll just go through this. So the first thing was that I learned is you don't need special qualifications. And I've learned to prioritize emotional intelligence over skills. I can teach skills, but I can't teach personality. I've learned that conservation is messy and nonlinear. And I learned this well before I started my project, to not focus on what the people need. So pick up a broom, put down your camera. If something's happening, if someone died in the village, don't work, like go participate, buy coffee and candles, wash dishes, focus on the people. And that's got to be the priority over the science if you want to actually support conservation where you are. Focus on the right people and ask the community who those people are, and they will tell you. Keep some coffee on, some cold beer, some mineral water. All the big the decisions don't happen standing at a podium. They happen quietly, sitting together, time after time, having a drink, eating some food, building a friendship, and then you build trust. And then when you have to make a big leap of faith, you have that trust built up. So it's all about having something ready. So when someone comes over, you give them something cold to drink. And that's where it all starts, and that's where it really all happens. I've learned to be transparent and ready with a relatable cause, and to back it out if it gets hot, so that if you don't agree, find a common goal that doesn't make you feel hot, and then work your way gently and slowly back in toward the parts where it gets sticky. I've learned to delegate things that I'm not good at, and to be very generous with my credit and with my resources. I've learned not to make myself the star of my project. I mean, we study really sexy animals, and it's very easy to make it be about you. But I've learned the less I make it about me, the better things go. I've learned to strive for humility and compassion. I love talking, and I am continuously making myself be quiet and listen and listen and listen some more. I've learned to integrate. So we don't live in a little house with a team that lives on rice and beans and gets super bonded. It's awesome for the team. They love it. And it's easy, it's efficient, it's cost effective. And what we've done is we live hosted by different members of the community in their homes, in more uncomfortable settings, eating things that maybe we don't even feel great eating sometimes. But by being very integrated into the community in that way, it infuses the community with a little bit of cash, and more importantly, it gets them to be a part of the project. And so they really experience your realities. So it's more expensive and inefficient in the short term, but long term, it's a pretty effective way to go about things. So put the women and the young people in the center. That's very important. And I heard about it at the beginning before I even started this work, and I didn't understand why. And now I do. Be consistent and on time, be inclusive, peddle hope. There's a lot of people that run on anger and on hopelessness and on urgency and despair. And we're all so compassion fatigued, and hope floats, and it brings people up, and it brings people together. And so I've learned to come from a place of hope, even when it doesn't always feel true. It's definitely the most energizing and best. It's just the healthiest way to be. And yeah, that final thing, assume noble intent. So those are the lessons I've learned. I always want to know what other people's lessons are. And that's pretty much what I've got for you. So there's my website. And we have a mailing list. So I'd love if you guys want to stay in touch and know what we're doing, you can get on there and find our newsletter. There's a sheet out front too with a newsletter. So if you want to put your name and your email address, you can stay in touch and see what we're doing. So again, my name is Katherina and my project's called the Whales of Guerrero. And yeah, I'm glad you came to my talk. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Katherina. So she has been very open and honest with us today with all of the trials and tribulations. And so I'm hoping for some good questions. I'm going to start. Roseanne, do we have any online?
Can you list some of the species you see often?
Sure. So we're there in the wintertime. And so the #1 species that we spend time around is the humpback whale. If we're talking about marine mammals, that's the #1. And that's also the target species. So it's what we're looking for. We've seen 16 species of marine mammals in the area. And so the most common dolphins are the pantropical spotted dolphins. We have great rough-toothed dolphins where we are. We see bottlenose dolphins, false killer whales, orcas. Some of the less common ones are the Brutus whale. We've had pygmy sperm whales, one sperm whale, couple aberrant adolescent fur seals and sea lions have come our way. Yeah, those are some of the species that we have.
Great, thank you. Questions from folks in the room? All right, gonna go for a little run up here. Hang on.
Hello, thank
Hi.
you so much for sharing. I feel really inspired by your talk and find that this is something very similar to what I hope to be doing in the future. So I was just kind of wondering if you have any tips on how to find your place in the world and your personal passion project. Because personally, like I graduated in 2 years studying environmental science and biology, and there's so many places I want to go. And, you know, there's so many different species I would love to help out and communities I would love to see grow. But there's all these opportunities and it's like, where to start? So do you have any tips?
Sure. So I have the most eclectic background in the world, and I think all of you guys are more organized and together than I am. You're sitting here in this great university doing focused work. Now I am, when I was in my 20s, I was, I was a go-go dancer. I was selling timeshare. I was doing some travel writing. I got trained as a yoga teacher. I was a sculptor. I hitchhiked everywhere. Gosh, I mean, I shouldn't be running this big fancy project. But I worked at the Science Museum and I had like a million jobs. And I was really mad all the time because I wanted to be in charge of stuff and nobody would hire me to be in charge. And they made me do like accounting and budgets and HR and research and evaluation. And now I look back and it's like all of these jobs that I really resented and felt like weren't right for me are exactly the things that I apply to my work every day. So, I mean, from working with people in groups and spreadsheets and analysis and making reports and building budgets and just being really physically strong and being able to be on a boat for a long time, do hard things, be lonely, get frustrated, get hurt, survive. So I wish I had known back then how every single job I had has affected me and come together to help me do this work that is the great gift of my life, where I'm so satisfied and thankful every day that I get to do something that I am passionate about and apply the skills that I have to something. So being a young generalist is very, very frustrating. And when my 20s and my 30s, I felt so undervalued because I didn't have expertise. But now I'm 51, and being a generalist is really, really helpful because I have all of this broad experience, and I can hold my own in a lot of environments that I probably couldn't if I had been in a more directed approach. And there's nothing wrong with being specialized and having your thing that you're into. You're not doing it wrong if you're doing it that way either. I think the key is to find the thing that makes you feel curious, and don't get overly attached to it's that thing for you forever, but to follow your curiosity and to pay attention to if your curiosity is something that can help the people around you and the world around you be a little bit better. Because like our planet is in trouble, and we don't get the luxury of doing blue sky science now. We don't get to, like, we have to all pull hard at the oars right now. And so, and we need every single person to think about it like that. And most people don't have the capacity because of their pasts and their presence. They don't have the ability. And so if you're sitting here in this room and you have this ability to think about these questions and apply, then I feel like it's on you to be a part of that. And what gives me inspiration and hope is meeting other people who are doing their very, very random and special projects that are all about them. And for me, it's about whales in Mexico and bringing people together. But it could be about anything. It's just about putting together your stuff in a way that is so very you, and then sticking with it. And over time, you look back and you've made a life that is so rewarding. Is that helpful? Good.
All right. Questions online, Roseanne?
What exactly were the studies you did on the whales in Guerrero?
Okay. So the studies we did on the whales of Guerrero, we didn't know if the whales that were coming through, the humpback whales, were passing through or if it was a destination. And we didn't know which population they were coming from, if they were a part of the distinct population segment that is down associated with Central America and Southern California, or if they were the distinct population, a segment that was associated with farther north mainland Mexico that comes up to Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. And so we needed to figure out how many, how they were using the space, if it was a calving area, if it was a destination or just a migratory place for them, or both. And if there was any kind of a residency thing, and if there were some areas in the region that were more favored for whales where they might be more vulnerable to potential threats. So that's pretty much what we studied.
Thank you. Questions in the room?
Hi, yes,
Hi.
thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering more about the beginning of the process that you were speaking about, and how you got those first few fishermen to really care and to take a chance on you. Did you think you just kind of conveyed your passion enough and to make them care enough? And also, were they still fishermen at the time, or were they fully, I guess, paid workers from you, or kind of how did that ball start rolling?
Okay, so I was not a fisherman anymore at that time. I still fish a little bit, but I really lost my taste for it when the fisheries started to plummet. And so like when I moved here to Oregon, I lived in Portland for 18 years, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to go fishing for salmon in the river. But it's so hard to catch a salmon in the river, and I don't want to take any fish out if there's not so much more fish than we possibly can need. So I've pretty much, my fish fever has gone way down over the years. So when I was there, my first job, I was the IT manager for Society for Marine Mammalogy, which I still am. And so I was doing websites, and I was doing, I don't think I was doing a little bit of search engine optimization back then, and I was doing travel writing, and I was making sculptures were kind of the things that I was making a living at. And I think I was doing a little bit of yoga teaching and life coaching back then too. So I had a bunch of stuff I was doing when I started the project. And what I knew we would do is I knew we would do this 5-year study, and I knew we would do maybe something down the line with ecotourism. And that's really it. I didn't have I didn't have a super strong idea. I just came from a place where I was like, okay, I'm too old to have kids, and I want to nurture the world, and I want to have a meaningful life. So this felt good. I'm going to help this village, and we're going to do something with whales. And then I asked everyone I knew to donate, and I raised $20,000 for that first year. And that was enough to support me being down there for 4 months to do the first study. And then it kind of grew from there. And the education piece, that came organically. I didn't know that there was going to be a big education program, and I didn't know there would be a big social development program or community development aspect. Those are things that happened over the next few years that were driven by community request and demand.
Great. Question online.
As someone more familiar with the science research side, how do you learn to become a better storyteller?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that if you don't feel like you're a good science storyteller, it's a really good idea to delegate that and then spend a lot of time talking with each other about it and practicing. So yeah, like I'm on the opposite side where I'm not very good at analysis, and I'm good at data collection, but not good at data management. And I'm not good at writing science papers. And so I have other people to help me with those sides of it. And then I'm good at the communication side of it. And so then we team up and really help each other. And that doesn't mean I'm off the hook. Like I have to understand the science and be good at it. But somebody else is taking on the lion's share of it, while I'm taking on the lion's share of the community connection piece of it.
Questions in the room?
Thank you so much for great presentation and sharing, mistakes and successes. And it truly looks like it's been an amazing experience. What I'm curious about is having you tell us the story of the data that you found. Which DPS are you looking at? Is it a calving ground? And that sort of stuff. I mean, again, maybe because I'm trained as a scientist and I don't know the answers. And so those are, I think, key pieces that I'd like to hear about. Thanks.
That was last night. Okay.
Sorry, I missed it. Last night was my sailing night, right? And I was on the bay and it was gorgeous out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it.
And so what we found is that our area is a calving ground, and our area is a destination for both the Central America and the mainland Mexico DPSs, and where we are. Yeah. And we do very generously, happily, liberally share our data with NOAA and with OSU. Scott and Debbie have our genetic samples, and we share with UNAM, with UABS, with everybody, so that our data is published. And there's still more and more always. But what we do is we really work hard to collect rigorous data and have it be clean and tight, and then find co-authors to share it out so that we can, because I just can't do that. As much as I like it, I can't do the data and do everything else too. So yeah.
More about partnerships. So if people are interested in a little bit more of the science background, the talk from last night is already online. So if you go to the past seminar page, you can watch that there. Any other questions online?
Has ecotourism in whale watching taken over being the main source of income for this community, or is it still mainly fishing?
I think it's more ecotourism now. I mean, between the women, and now there's more places to stay, and there's the marine eco tours. There's snorkeling, and in addition to the whales and the dolphins, and there's still some fishing, but it's I think it's definitely a much more ecotourism than fishing place at this point.
Questions in the room? All right. Yeah, go to that mic. You will need to flip up the switch on it to turn the mic on. It is off at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, is that working?
Hi.
Okay, great. Hi, thanks. That was
Oh, yeah,
wonderful.
you're my dinner partner.
I was at your dinner. Yeah. So lovely to see you. This was wonderful. It's such a great example of really being ingrained in the community. And, you know, there's all these papers out there about not doing parachute science and things like that. And just what an example. It's amazing. But my question is what's next, and how do you hope to see your project grow?
So what's next is immediately it's an El Nino year. And so it's probably likely that there will be less whales than normal. And the Mexican government's not organized right now. So there's not support or backing to keep the whales protected from harassment. And so my big priority at this moment is I'm fundraising to have a vigilance and monitoring program that's guide run and guide led. So we're raising some money for gas to pay for the boat to be out there, and to have good science communicators partnering with good captains to go out and partner up and be a voice and a presence on the water to keep the whales safe. Other big projects right now that we've got going are the long-term goal is to create a mom calf sanctuary for resting areas for them. And so we're working on raising funds to be able to set up a 6-site land-based study. We've done a few years in one area, but to spread across this 75-mile stretch of coastline that we have to identify where are the very important areas for mom calf pairs to rest, as we see them resting and nursing a lot in our area. And so figure out where there's the biggest threats of boat interactions and net entanglements, and where the whales tend to go. So that's going to be a 3-year effort that we're postponing because it's El Nino this year. But I mean, I can't say for sure what's going to happen, but we did this in 2016 during an El Nino year where we did a land-based field study and there were no whales. And so my poor team got sunburned out there all season long, and we collected very little sighting data. So those are, and when we do these land-based studies, we'll be doing a concurrent education and a community awareness program in each of the 6 sites that we're running along in this whole stretch of coastline. Other work that we're doing, I'm really excited about sharing what we've learned and helping other coastal communities. And so now people come from other places like Oaxaca and Acapulco to see what we're doing. And we're partnering with some people in Kenya on the coast there. And so sharing what we're learning and then learning from them. So a big interest for me at this point is to listen and share and support other people to do community-based and community-driven conservation and science work. So that's a lot of my energy goes into that these days. And then the education programs have to continue, and the women's support programs have to continue, and just the continual monitoring, having this now really nice 10 years of data, it's so important. And so I don't think I could rest at night if I didn't know that we weren't continuing to jump out on boats when we could, and teach the kids and support the women in the communities. It's a strong program, but it can't just stop at this point. So And then it's about raising up the next generation of people that can take this project over. So yeah, those are some of the things we're working on.